So, I'm here with my roommate, best friend, partner in crime, Sarah Jones, and we just watched Nanbaka. Holy shit.
Holy fucking shit.
We hated it, and we're gonna tell you why.
Alright, so, all you need to know about this premise is that it's fucking paper thin. I can see directly through it like some sort of translucent Fujo bait ghost. Basically, there's 4 boys, which you are led to believe are the main boys, but honestly, they don't get developed. So these are quote-unquote the main boys. They are in prison, and they like to break out of prison, and that's their hobby. So that's the basic premise. The 4 boys, I can't even remember their names.
Jugo, Nico, Rock, and Uno. Not to be confused with Yahtzee.
His full name is Uno Yahtzee, because guess what? He likes to gamble. That's his main character trait, is that he likes to gamble, and that he likes the ladies, and that he's pretty, I think.
But not really, because all the other characters are saying how ugly he is.
He likes to think he's a narcissist, I guess.
Which brings me into my first major point, and that is the character design. In case you haven't noticed, because it's been up on the screen.
It looks like they, picked up darts and just threw it at a color wheel, and they were like, okay, those don't look good together, but, we chose them, so fuck you.
All of these were easily salvageable. Most of them, if you, made the colors, a little bit more coherent, or removed a handful of accessories that were completely extraneous, they would have been fine. The main character, Jugo, has heterochromia for some reason. If you made his eyes the same color, it would be fine. Maybe removed his tacky number tattoo on his face. Another point about the character design in relation to the world building, which we have fucking issues with. The prison uniforms aren't consistent, which would be fine, I guess, if that's an aesthetic choice you're going for, but out of the 4 leads, 2 of them match, and 2 of them match the other 2, but there's no reason why. They're in the same cell, in the same division, so there's no reason for that.
Also, no other character in this show has a prison uniform in general. They're all wearing some variety of stupid thing that's ugly.
Inversely, the guards do have a uniform, but the higher-ups, the supervisors and the warden, have such extraneous versions of that uniform that it hurts to look at. They all have cat teeth. That's a thing.
The issue with the cat teeth, there's no thing to say that we are in the human universe, dimension, whatever. We know we're in Japan, because that's mentioned a couple of times. We're in Nanba prison. But we don't know if we're on Earth Japan. We don't know if these people are human. Nobody explains shit about shit.
In the interest of fairness, the most solid design in this show is Hajime, their supervisor.
Which he still kind of looks like Saitama mixed with the guy from the Genghis Khan music video. But I digress because he's not ugly.
His design is the simplest, and that's why it works. His assistant, the pretty boy, is also fine, I guess.
He's cute.
The ninja guy, once they remove his mask, but even he has
the fireman. We don't know any of their names at this point. We watched the entire first season, and it was so forgettable.
The one with the pierced nipple, but only one.
Okay, his nipple does not exist. He has a titty piercing. His chestular flesh is pierced, but there's no nipple to be pierced. So I just have a problem with that concept, laying that on the table right now. Side note, speaking of piercings and tattoos, a lot of the characters have number tattoos. Jugo has the 15 on his face. Uno has the 1s on his hands. Rock has 69 tattooed on his arms.
Ladies.
And then Nico is the one I have the issue with here. I already have an issue with his design because of the clashing colors. I already have an issue with his design because
the extraneous bandages.
He has bandages all over his body. I know that he's supposed to be like, oh, I'm sick. But when you're sick, you don't have bandages on for no reason. But he has a tongue tattoo. You can't do that. You would need to get that redone every week. You don't want to get your tongue tattooed anyway. If he's so sickly, he shouldn't be getting his mouth he's gonna die of an infection. I don't care anymore.
Not every individual thing we're mentioning here are inherently bad or undoable. It's just the combination of things doesn't work. For instance, we're both really big fans of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which is known for its bright colors, its over-the-top designs. But that works. And I can explain, not in too great depth, why. And that's because even if it's bright, there's a sense of a coherent color palette. JoJo knows what it wants to be. The characters look fine together. They look like they belong together. In Nanbaka, there's no pair of characters that looks good together. They clash with themselves and they clash with each other. If you look at any of like the main gangs in JoJo, like they look like they belong together. In particular, the anime adaptation of Part 4, Diamond is Unbreakable, had really great color direction. That looked nice. My favorite part of JoJo is Part 6, Stone Ocean. Just based off the covers of that, they all have really bright colors and they like belong together. Because Hirohiko Araki knows what he's doing. Follow up, because before we even get into the main plot, who is responsible for this? And after we watched this, I did some research. The original creator is a woman named Sho Furamada. This is their first work, like, ever. So I give them some leeway with that. The original character design was by Kento Toya, who did key animation and animation direction on shows like Erased, which I loved, Angel Beats, which I didn't finish, Sword Art Online, which I have a personal vendetta against. But it's his first character design job. So again, newbie. A lot of the voice actors have never done stuff before. The one I have an issue with is the director, Shinji Takamatsu, who was the main director on School Rumble, on Sakamoto Deska, and Gintama episodes 1 through 201, which is interesting because Gintama is a show that takes a similar tone with this, or what it's like supposed to be, but it works.
Gintama is fucking fantastic.
It's this show done right. The other first impression we had were the opening and ending themes.
Basically, I saw a picture of the characters and I was like, well, this is searingly bright and I think I can get past that because it's two of my favorite things, which I have never admitted out loud, but I love moe things. And I love boys and I love prison settings. I love everything that this could possibly promise me. So I was like, yo, Mads, let's watch this. Give this a chance, my dude. And she was immediately like, no. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do some digging and I'll see if it's worth it. Cause immediately out of the gate, she was like, no, this is gonna be bad. And I was like, I don't believe you. I have taste and I think this is cool looking. So I watched the opening and the ending and they're really good. The opening song is a bop. We've been listening to it nonstop because even though we hate this show, it's so good. It's catchy. It's a good song.
The ending is cute too.
The ending specifically is my favorite out of the two because it looks like an old like Nico Nico Doga style video. I've kind of realized this show was made with a budget of $12 and a Subway sandwich to feed the entire crew. They've reused shots so much, which is excusable if you do that well, but they just do it blatantly and expect you to forget. They expect you to be like, oh, I've never seen that before, even though that was in the first episode and now it's the last episode. I don't know where I am. And basically, the reason that the ending functions like a Nico Nico Dogo video from like 2008 is because it has little to no animation in it. Because I think they just were like, you know what's better than caring? Not caring. Let's just slap this here and make sure that we just don't mention it.
No one will know.
No one will know. If we add enough sparkles, you can't notice.
That's another thing. Every single shot, with a handful of exceptions in this show, has this sparkle filter laid over this, and it's really jarring. Maybe in 2 shots it looks like it's supposed to be there, but most of the time it just looks like the animation studio is trying to distract you. Like they're pouring glitter in the plot holes, and maybe they're like, alright.
A lot of the frames don't move and they just have the glitter overlay over it. Like you're supposed to be like, okay, yes, this is animation at its finest. Even though it's not moving, it's just a still frame with sparkles to make you think that oh my god.
There's plenty of like ways that animation studios try to draw your eye away from still shots because that's completely understandable. And animation is hard and expensive and the anime industry is a shitty place to work.
But when you use it every single frame of your production,
it loses its impact.
You're doing something wrong.
So, after that, it's the cold open. The series starts out on a cold open, and it's not a good one.
I'm a very big fan of cold opens. I love them. Generally, that's like the way to go in my book. But this felt like I was on episode 6 of an anime that I had not watched the previous 5 episodes of. I literally had to check to see if I clicked on the first episode. Like, it made no sense at all.
They do like a handful of what could be character establishing moments, but they all fall really flat. They just seem more like one-off gags, which makes sense because all of these characters have like one joke to their personality that gets repeated ad nauseum. So like, I guess you can't really establish a character that doesn't exist, but
Yeah, we talked about Uno. He's like gambling, womanizing, narcissist. Rock is hungry.
That's his
and he likes
personality.
to fight. I was so ready to love this boy. I was ready to accept him into my heart and into my home, and he betrayed me by being hungry and liking to fight, and that's it. That's all he has. Nico likes anime. And he's sickly.
They do one of his first lines was like, oh, it's like an anime. That's like almost never a good sign in an anime.
Yeah.
That joke was kind of overused in like 2005.
And then Jugo is good at breaking out of prison. That's it. That's all he has. He's a sad boy.
That's even like acknowledged by the other characters. Like a common gag is that other characters be like, you're really not good at anything besides breaking out of prison, are you? The cold open also introduces Hajime and the pretty boy. I can call him the pretty boy because other characters call him pretty boy. That's his defining trait, is that he's pretty.
He's very soft. I like him, honestly. Like, if I had to pick characters that I actually would care about in a different setting. So, he and Hajime, I would care about probably in a different setting.
Yeah.
Anyway, like, I don't... And the ninja. We haven't gotten to the ninja yet.
The ninja.
He's a good boy.
There's a ninja in this show. So,
anyway, the cold open. We keep on getting... There's so much to talk about wrong in this anime that we keep on getting distracted every time we try to make a point. But the cold opening didn't feel like a first episode. They tried to build character that just fell flat and did not exist. And then they tried to kind of lead into a plot from there, kind of?
not really.
But there was no plot to lead into, so they're just kind of sitting around, making really poorly paced jokes.
Yeah, that's another thing. This is a problem throughout the entire series, but it's actually especially prevalent in the cold open, which is a bad sign, and that is that the pacing in terms of joke delivery is abysmal. There's never a chance to breathe. It's like constant slapstick comedy, but because every single shot has almost identical impact, none of the punchlines land.
There's no build-up to a payoff. It's all just joke. And there's no, like, anticipation. You just can't care. There's no way that you can care.
Even more than that, it's like a constant stream of information. They never give you a chance to really process anything that's happening. The cold open also did a very poor job of setting up the world building, or lack thereof, because there's none.
As we said before, it's really hard to tell what type of world you're in because it's never explained. In the cold opening, you see them running around the prison. You're supposed to assume these characters have broken out of this prison multiple times on like a daily fucking basis because that's what they do. Whatever. You see them running through empty hallways. That's all you see when they're running. You don't see like any sort of aspect of the facility. All you see is hallways. Later on in the show, you're told by a different character that there's a ski resort, an arcade, like a shopping mall.
Just a bunch of shit in this
There's
prison.
a bunch of shit in this prison, which if these characters had broken out so many times, I think they would have found at least one of these massive things before. So there's no anything to this. The architecture of this setting is non-existent.
And it's not really like they're just like manipulating it to get to a punchline, because those punchlines never land, so it feels like a waste. Even just looking at the setting, there's a lot of questions raised because certain areas of the building are very like dilapidated while others are very nice. The hallways always look really bleak, but the main character's cell has fucking tatami mat flooring.
That shit's expensive.
Meanwhile, you see one of the guards' break rooms and it's like all cracked and like I don't know.
It doesn't make sense.
The other reason it's hard to get a good grasp of the backgrounds or the setting is because they don't draw in backgrounds a lot of the time.
There is times where it would go a good 30 seconds to a minute with no backgrounds. It was just color blocked backgrounds with a character in front, which I couldn't tell where we were half of the time. And do you know why? There were no establishing shots. Like, if you want to create a narrative in which you're not sure of your environment, yes, that's fine. You can forego the establishing shots to create intentional viewer confusion. But in a setting that Nanbaka has, in a prison, they know where they are, and so should you.
The entire premise of this show and the basis of its comedy is the setting. It's that they're in a prison, which brings me to another point I have, which is that there's no reason for this to be in a prison because it does not function as such. The gag that they're breaking out of prison is the only only part of the comedy that actually benefits from the fact that it takes place in a prison. So there's really no reason for it to be there. Like, there's entire scenes where they're just like frolicking around an arcade, and it's like, why is this in a prison? Most of this could have been done just as fine in a altered high school setting. And that's definitely overdone. Anime is full of special high schools, but it would have made more sense. I kind of have to commend this author for having new ideas, but they're bad ideas.
Like, you could even set this in some sort of apartment building rather than a prison. Because, you know, none of these characters have a reason to really be in prison as far as the viewer is concerned. Nico had, like, drugs placed on him, so he, like, got arrested for having drugs, but he didn't know he had drugs, and then he got medical placement because he's sick, I guess.
And he broke out. So
he broke out, so they're like,
you're going to Nanbaka, kid.
You're going to big boy prison. Rock was in gang violence, which Nico and Rock are both American. He was in some sort of gang-related violence, which he then broke out of prison because the food was bad, because again, his only character trait is that he's hungry and strong.
Uno is British and was in jail for gambling?
Which gambling is not illegal. I don't know what they mean by saying that he's in prison for gambling. I guess he could have been in there for, like, money laundering or something. I don't understand. And then Jugo was born in fucking prison. You don't go to prison for being born in prison. None of these things warrant being in a supermax prison. Yes, they've broken out of prison before, but no.
The ninja's there for trespassing. That's a misdemeanor.
None of these crimes are, like, felonies?
The point is, this author clearly had the idea to set like a comedy in Supermax prison, but wasn't really willing to commit to that. They just kind of liked the idea of Supermax prison, but didn't put the effort to write in characters that belonged in Supermax prison, and it's not impossible to do that and still make them likable. Because all of these backstories are like kind of half-assed anyways. Jugo's gets more complicated when they start weaving in the sort of like drama plot on the side.
There's something about medical engineering people. There's a guy, Musashi, who bursts into flames sometimes. You know, it's fine. It's fine. I don't care. Because moving on from that, Jugo sometimes has knives for arms.
They're like swords. They're like full katanas.
They're like, he doesn't like harden his skin or anything. Like, he doesn't like, his arms don't like turn into like metal. He literally just replaces his arm from like the forearm down with a sword. His arm is gone and a sword is present. I don't know what the logic behind making that was, because I feel like they're trying to make him edgy, perhaps, but it just falls flat, and I feel like I'm watching some shitty Bleach alternate universe.
Related to the fact that our protagonist sometimes has sword arms is the fact that the tone is incredibly hard to pin down.
The biggest issue with a lot of this show is that it doesn't know what it wants to be. The comedy-drama dichotomy that they're trying to push doesn't work because they can't commit to being comedy or drama. They're failing at literally everything they're trying because they can't commit to it. A really big issue with, again, the world building. There are characters in this cast of supposedly human people, even though they all have cat teeth. Some of these characters have superpowers.
The biggest problem, I think, is that they never establish any sort of rules to how the powers work in this universe. The audience never knows what to expect from anything. You're just supposed to sort of, like, accept things as they are.
Which I feel like a really big issue that they had in the storytelling specifically was that they decided to do a tournament arc in episode 3. Tournament arcs are generally after you have established your characters, after people care about your characters, and after there is a set goal to be met. They had this tournament because it was New Year's.
Just because.
Just because. And there were no stakes.
So they go through this tournament arc, and it is the leads who we have no reason to care about because we know very little about them and they were never fully established. Even by the end, their personalities are like pretty vague beyond the gags they're used for. But they go through and they fight all these characters that are also in prison. We don't know why. They're also over-designed like fucking crazy. Same with their supervisors, who are honestly some of the worst over-designed characters in my opinion. I hate looking at them. So they fight, and the supervisors fight to be the best or something. This is because the warden wanted it. The warden, by the way, I thought was a character I was gonna like before it dawned on me that she had one trait, and it's tsundere. They fight all these characters that we don't care about. Possibly the most egregious thing that happened in the tournament arc was not in the tournament arc itself. At one point, there is an entire episode that detracts from it. where suddenly it cuts to giving an elaborate backstory to the ninja character that was introduced in episode 2, sort of as a joke, that never came up again.
He showed up this one time as a joke, then he showed up in the middle of a fight between the protagonist and what you are to assume is the antagonist, which is the first time the antagonist has shown up the entire time.
They're just fighting.
Fun fact, he's not the antagonist, he's the guy who bursts into flames sometimes. I don't care, and I don't know, and I don't care to know. There's something happening with Musashi, and he's on fire.
The other thing about the fights in the tournament arc is that they're played for jokes up until the very end, when there are suddenly stakes in theory, but not really shown.
The thing with the violence in this show is up until that point, it's very comedic. It's very slapstick anime comedy style violence. Like, there's no gore, there's no injuries shown. Up until then, there's no reason for us to believe that anybody's, like, really in danger. And then, jarringly, there's suddenly usage of blood, which they use when Hajime blocks Jugo's fucking knife arm with his hand, and his hand is bleeding all over the place, and he, like, beats up the kid, and then Hajime has Jugo's blood all over his face, and it's like, I guess? Okay. I read the first couple chapters of the manga because I was like, okay, this show is killing me softly, and I need to know if it's because of the comic source material. As a person who makes comics, I need to know if this is the fault of the comic or if this is the fault of the anime adaptation. And I was like, I was ready for it to start off on a very similar note, but they completely forgo the cold open in the manga originally. There's no cold open. It's pretty standard character introduction. And I feel like I know more about the characters from reading that, like, first chapter of the manga than I know from watching the entire 13-episode season of the anime.
Because they introduce characters at the speed of light. Like,
I don't...
You never get a chance to really get a read on anyone before they introduce the next chunk. It's never even one at a time. It's always, like, in duos or...
This show has a cast of almost upwards of 20 characters. They don't finish establishing one character before they move on to introducing the next. And that is just poor writing. You're just trying to introduce more handsome boys to sell merchandise of. That's what I feel like it is. Which brings me to the point of it being Fujo bait, but it fails at even being Fujo bait, because none of them are pretty. None of them look good together.
It feels like the show was aiming for mass appeal, but the way it did that was instead of just being a generically likable series, it tried to hit as many specific niches as possible. Conflicting with the Fujo bait, sort of. There are only two really, like, repetitive female characters in the show. There's the warden, and then there's this, like, nurse robot who doesn't really count as a character, but she's there. And, like, they still even occasionally go over the fan service approach with them, and I'm just led to wonder, who is that for?
Who you making the titties jiggle for at this point? By trying to appeal to too many people, they're not appealing to anyone.
It doesn't know its audience. It doesn't know what it wants to be. That's the biggest problem with the show, is that it doesn't know what it is.
Because, again, they're so indecisive on what they want to do in the story, in the art, in the literally every aspect of the show is just indecisive.
Why does it exist? That's the point we're driving at, the end game of this. Why does this exist? It probably seems like there's no reason we should be making this video, but counter to what you said, the show isn't necessarily, like, unpopular. You got a second season right away that's currently airing. At this point, it probably just sounds like we're kicking it while it's down. I don't
care. I don't care if we're kicking it while it's down. It deserves to be kicked. It deserves to be down. I could not have any less sympathy for this show.
I mean, I'm sure there are people who like it, and if you are one of those people, please, no. Sarah, you have terrible taste.
I have notoriously bad taste. I care about things that I shouldn't care about. Like, my favorite Yuri on Ice character is Yorgi Popovich. I am number one Yorgi Popovich stan. I love him. And I care so much about him, and he's barely on screen. And I can't feel anything for these characters. Who I watched an entire I watched an entire 13-episode season of this show, and I can't care about these characters at all.
Nice segue.
So
had to bring Yorgi into this.
I love Yorgi Popovich. He's my baby boy. I don't put that in there.
I'm putting it in there.
Don't put the fact that I said that he's my baby boy.
What the fuck was I saying?
Mads, I love him.
If you are someone who does like this show, please explain it to me. I would be willing to listen because I don't understand. I'm also an extremely forgiving person. I don't really like to dislike things.
I love to dislike things, on the other
Clearly.
hand. But I'm the one who went into this trying to like it actively. I was ready to like throw my hands up and be like, oh my god, this is the best show ever. It's my new favorite anime. And then I got about 10 minutes in and my eyes were twitching and I felt like death was near. This is legitimately the worst thing I've ever watched. And I've watched some really, really bad anime. Like, I've watched really bad anime. Like, this is just the worst. The other thing about this show is that it doesn't feel like it's modern. It feels like it was made in about 2003. We're better than this. We're better than this.
2016 was overall a really good, strong anime season. So, Sarah's looking over at our giant poster of Mob Psycho 100. The point is, there's no excuse. And I think that's the main reason we wanted to make this video.
You can't learn from just doing good work. You have to look at things that have failed, analyze why they have failed, and then learn from their mistakes.
I hope this author was able to learn from their mistakes and makes better things in the future.
I do want to defend that the manga isn't as bad. I'm restating that. The manga is not as bad as this anime. There's only up to go from here. So I'll probably check out their next project.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful. Final rating.
2 out of 10, because I liked the opening and ending, and also I'm not naive enough to think this is legitimately the worst thing I've ever seen. I know there's something worse out there, so yeah. 2 out of 10. That's it.
He has knives for arms.